How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Rolling Lines, an Apples and Genos production. My name is Josh Hutchinson. I'll be your host. We are streaming live on YouTube right now, so come join us in the chat. And if you're already here, hit subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the season. We are getting there, but we need some help. So come on in, hit that subscribe on the YouTube. Tonight, I've got another special guest with me, but before I introduce him, I'm going to hit that beautiful intro music. Tonight, I am joined by a special guest. He is the co-host of the 5-Hole Fantasy Hockey Taxi Squad podcast. He is a former writer for the Apples and Genos website, and he also has notoriously nice individual rates playing on the Dallas Stars fourth line. It's Craig Smith.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on, Josh? Thanks for having me, man. You can't blow my cover that I'm secretly also an NHL player, and I have been for years with the Nashville Predators and the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, for many years you're a grizzled vet. All right, man. Well, I wanted to jump in here. I wanted to hash out a conversation with you before we get into scheduling and everything. I wanted to remind you of a conversation we had on Twitter before the season, where you commented on a podcast that I had done with Blake and Binksy, where we did a mock draft where we each drafted three players. We did a mock first 3 rounds, where we each drafted multiple teams. And you said, I think Blake Creamer and Binksy were asleep at the wheel on this mock. Josh took their lunch money on this one. Still delightful stuff for the boys. Get it in your ears, my dudes. And I said, Craig, have I ever told you that you have the best and most accurate takes? And that really pissed them off. They were not impressed about that. So we decided to have a bet between the 4 of us where we're pitting yours and my total cupful scores versus Binksy's and Blake's. So I wanted to give everyone an update here.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this, to be honest, like 2 days ago, and I was just, I'm going to let you give the update, but then I can give my thoughts on it. So
yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts for sure. So right now we are losing, unfortunately. We are down 4,006.7 points to 4,806 to 4,508. And I would like to mention that I have by far the most points out of the 4 of us individually. So, Craig, what's going on, buddy? What's going on with your couple team?
Yeah, look, man, I'm taking the one on the chin for the team here on this bet. I am certainly costing us the lead here, but we have things in motion, Josh. Okay, it's been a very busy week for me in Cupful, and I'm really trying to make some moves there. And we actually just gave the listeners on the Taxi Squad our latest episode, an update on our listener league, and I made a wonderful decision to become part of this great world of content creation in the fantasy hockey space in terms of podcasting, but I did not know what that comes with in terms of people asking you to be part of their leagues. So what I have done has said yes to way too many, which has stretched my resources and my ability to focus on very highly competitive leagues like a Cupful. And I am trying to remedy that. So we're going to try to make a second half push here, Josh, against Binksy and Blake. And my commitment to you is to get us back in the lead here, because I am dragging ass and it's not doing good things for us. But hey, there's some big acquisitions coming here. Like I just acquired Gorgiev, and I'm just on the verge of acquiring Nichushkin and Zuccarello, although I know he's injured. But I saw a couple updates on Zuccarello. in terms of being able to come back after the holiday break. So that should bolster both the forwards that have been really struggling and the goalies that had just got decimated by injury because I lost Hill and I lost Wall. That didn't help things. But I also, drafted Tage, I drafted Meyer, I drafted
Ooh,
I had some really hard luck there, but I'm gonna take it on the chin. It just I think I said it to the guys the other day, including Dynasty, Redraft, and Keeper. I'm in 15 leagues. So it's
yeah,
been, and the results so far are on both far ends of the spectrum in terms
yeah.
of performance. Uh, but
Hey,
my commitment
let's
to you is I'm focused, I'm ready, and we're gonna win this hat bet. Okay.
thanks, brother. I love it. You got me fucking pumped up now. That was a good motivational speech for yourself and for myself. I can definitely empathize with joining way too many leagues. I'm in 10 this year. It's the most I've ever been in. I try, and I at the start of the season, I was like, I'm gonna limit this to as few as I can, just the most competitive leagues. So I'm in a few of our listener leagues, our patron league, a couple content creator leagues, and they're all hyper competitive. And I'm finding myself, it's actually been. I mean, I'm also on both ends of the spectrum. Where in one of our listener leagues, I'm doing awful. I'm like near the bottom, and in I think there's a couple content creator leagues where I'm just like I'm kind of like scraping. I'm trying to get back into a playoff spot because they're just so competitive. But yeah, it's definitely I've spread myself a little bit too thin, so I'm gonna have to figure that out next year. But Cacuffle, on the other hand, it's probably one of my best leagues. And
What
actually in the 5-hole listener league this year, I did
what tier are you in the couple?
bottom because I completely shit the bed last year. Um,
Hey,
but this
look,
year I am in third. I am in first place in my division right now. So
I have to do you proud though, because I'm in the same division and tier as Binksy. So like I
yes,
gotta
that's
pick up
right.
I gotta pick up my socks here for the team, and I gotta pull something together. But the same journey as you, man. I'm in a couple of content spaces, like the 5-hole fantasy hacks guys. I'm in their listener league, and I'm
Oh yeah,
in second place in that league.
there you go.
Uh, but and then I'm in the A and G Dynasty, the A and G Patron Listener
Yes,
League,
that's right.
and I think I'm like hovering around playoff thing, and like my four Dynasty teams, and I don't even really like Dynasty format. I'll be transparent with you and the listeners.
Yeah,
I'm actually performing better in those than the redraft and the keeper. So like I don't even know what's going on at this
yeah.
point. Like
Yeah, man. I can totally relate. We're actually facing off against each other in the patron league this week. I think we're tied, or at least the
Oh,
last time I
that's
checked, we
right.
were.
We are.
I think we
We
were
are.
tied 4-4. So I just remembered that. Just before we kick things off, it looks like Super Forecaster is asking Chinnikov on PP1, Russians clicking, drop Byfield or Tolvanen for him. I would not drop Quentin Byfield for Chinnikov.
Mm-mm.
I Columbus is still just so in flux with their lineup. Like he may be on power play 1 right now, but like tomorrow, like the next game, he could be off power play 1. So I'm just not. Byfield has so much upside. He seems pretty well cemented on line 1, power play 1 at this point. Tolvanen as well, getting crazy 5v5 minutes for someone in Seattle on that matchup line, and he's just been great this year. So I still don't think I'd be dropped. I still think Chinnikov is probably a streamer at this point when Columbus has a good week, but at the same time, I mean, he's obviously doing great, but yeah, I don't think I'd be dropping either of those guys for him.
You can see me nodding. I agree.
Yeah,
And I think if you've got category coverage, yes, Chinnikov is doing some of the similar things that Tolvanen is doing, but the deployment for Tolvanen is probably more cemented than Chinnikov. I still have my own concerns about Byfield's overall time on ice. I obviously love the deployment, but
yes,
I think really for Byfield to really push that ceiling, he's got to start getting consistent, 17, 18-minute time on ice. And I don't know if that's going to happen. Not saying that I would drop Chinnikov or drop Byfield for Chinnikov, but you hit the nail on the head, right? Columbus, after the Jenner injury, which hurt so many souls in fantasy hockey, because if you don't love Boone Jenner, then we don't love you. But I think Columbus is still trying to figure out what their top six looks like without him. And that includes that second line of the youngsters. So you kind of got to see how that pans out, especially if they start giving Fantilli some more time on ice and Gaudreau maybe decides he wants to play, admirable hockey in the second half of the season. So
no, I definitely feel like Columbus. Gaudreau, actually, I feel like he's had some points the last little bit. I'll have to look that up, but let's go on. Let's move on to the power play planner, just so that we can keep things rolling. So that's our schedule a segment. We will go over the last 7 days and the results. We had Vancouver, Philly, the New York Rangers, and the Arizona Coyotes that were all 3-0. The Coyotes winning games again. Who would have thought? They were hot, then they were not, and then they're just a streaky team. Detroit, Ottawa, Edmonton, San Jose, all winless. Edmonton crashing back down to earth all of a sudden. And then Detroit, Ottawa, San Jose, they've all been extremely streaky teams. Ottawa just bad, I guess, at this point. One of Arizona's wins came last night against them, where they blew a 3-0 lead in their first game after firing their coach. So not a good look for Ottawa right now. In terms of individual players, Steven Stamkos over the last week had the most points in the league. He had 8 points in 3 games, including 5 goals. He had a 4-goal game, which really propelled me over Nate in one of our matchups in a Content Creators League, the Fantasy Puck Content Creators League, which was very nice. Nikita Kucherov, Nate McKinnon, they're back up at the top. They had 7 points in 3 games. Matt Duchene and Casey Middlestat had 6 points in 3 games. Is that Duchene again? I had to throw that in there. And then Jacob Chikrin, 6 assists in 4 games. So he's right up at the top there too, quietly. What do you think about that stuff? Do you have Duchene or Middlestat in any of your leagues here, Craig?
I've streamed Duchene a couple of times in some of my shallower leagues. I unfortunately wasn't able to hold him. I've also streamed Middlestad, but I know I've heard Blake speak on him and Nate speak on him a couple of times. Under the hood, is it sustainable? But like I also saw earlier today, he's on like a 67-point pace, and even with Tage back, he seems to have kind of still stabilized that time on ice. I love that to see, Stammer doing Stammer things. And, we were talking about Cooch last night on the Taxi Squad show, and like he's first overall in a lot of scoring formats right now in terms of fantasy contribution. And he's on like 136 point overall pace on the season, which is, what is that Cooch from 2 years ago, which is, amazing to see. Right. So, it's exciting stuff. Duchene doing what he's doing for Dallas, is he? I think you could probably see the player he was 2 years ago in Nashville, right, where he had that kind of quote unquote breakout season. So those that have him, I would suggest holding him until he kind of either cools off, or does he continue doing what he's doing? And Ottawa seems to continue to be in flux in terms of their offensive sustainability and consistency, but do they not have one of the the problem of too many riches on the back end, Chikrin being one of them. Sanderson has cooled off significantly. The Shabbat injury kind of hurt a little bit, but I just wanted to go back on what you said on that Arizona game where they blew that 3-0 lead. That was a devastating 0G night for me and many listeners. If you have Ingram and you decided to also roll Devin Levi, who was coming off 4 quality starts in a row, and they both just got obliterated and pulled within the first period of their games last night. And I did have a league where I had both of them starting, which did not go well.
Yeah, man. I had Devin Levi in a couple leagues. I picked him up actually this week because I was like, oh, he's kind of on a heater. I think he's getting things going. He might get a run here, and then not good. Although I don't know, he might get another start because UPL didn't look that much better when he came in. So
when you give up a
well,
9 spot to the Jackets,
yeah.
who knows who the starter is going to be the next game? They might let Comrie get a start now at this point.
Oh God. Oh God. All right, let's look at the schedule for the next little bit. So Thursday to Sunday, there's only 3 days with games because Sunday is Christmas Eve. There is one off night left remaining this week, so not including tonight when we're recording Wednesday. There's only one off night left. So, I mean, there's not a lot of great teams to stream from just because Thursday and Saturday are so full of games. But in terms of teams that you probably shouldn't be streaming from, LA, the Islanders, and the Kraken all only play on Saturday. They're all playing tonight, and then they don't play till Saturday. Winnipeg only plays on Friday, which is an off night. So if there are any Winnipeg Jets left on your waiver wire because they had a really nice off night schedule this week, maybe be picking one of those guys up. And then Boston, Chicago, Detroit, Edmonton, Montreal, the New York Rangers, and the Flyers all play on Friday. So they'll all play on that off night. Montreal and Philly plays the Thursday, Friday. And the rest of them play Friday, Saturday. So if you pick up a Montreal or Philadelphia player, you could just drop them after Friday for someone on Saturday if you can fit someone in your lineup there, but pretty unlikely. And then going into next week, got no games on Monday or Tuesday, Christmas and Boxing Day. So because the NHL just doesn't play games over that stretch. And then we've got 14 games on Wednesday, 4 on Thursday, and then 9 on each of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So technically, by the Dauber hockey definition of off nights and and heavy nights, the only off night is Thursday. But because there's only 9 games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be able to fit some guys in there. So there are 3 teams that have 3 games and avoid the super heavy Wednesday, and that's Edmonton, Montreal, and Philly. So they are probably the best teams to stream from next week. And then in terms of bad schedules, Vancouver only has 1 game next week, so you're probably not going to be wanting to stream from them. So that was a mouthful. Craig, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, look, I think from this week's perspective, I hope you got in early on the streamers. Like we talked about this on the Taxi Squad. Like you had to kind of it would have been one of those exception weeks where my strategy of using my ads early on, which seems to flabbergast a lot of GMs out there, but I am what I am. It would have benefited you this week because of the kind of strange finish to the week that we're about to see kind of come to fruition. Because you might be able to grab a Perfetti, like you mentioned, the Winnipeg style or a Nito Rider if you do want to get that a couple of additional games played, but there is not going to be much left in terms of waiver wire additions to your team. So, I know you and I are going to get into it. You might be looking at trying to maximize your opportunity to win your matchup this week through goalie streams, right? Looking to pick up the additional goalie categories or those additional points from your goalie starts for this week specifically. I looked at the next week's schedule. Yeah, it's a little strange from a streaming perspective. I think it kind of merits a little bit of a kind of wait and see coming out of the break. And you might be looking to try to hold players for both next week and the following week. Because as you mentioned, there isn't like a true, off night opportunity next week. So it's really, again, you might be looking at another week where it's beneficial to use your streaming spots for your goalie starts if you do you do practice that zero G strategy because of the shortened week. I don't know if all leagues would be scoring just in that time period. I have a few that are. I have some that have extended it through the that week and a half, week 12, week 13. But that's my initial thoughts on coming into the finish line for this week and heading into next week as well. It's going to be a tough sled for streaming for over the next 9 days.
All right, and our Power Play Planner player to watch of the week is Rasmus Ristolainen. He is 3% rostered. He's played over 20 minutes time on ice for the first time all year in each of the last 3 games, and currently playing on Power Play 1. It's been a couple of games in a row. We'll see if that sticks. I'm not sure. He has had a history of playing on Power Play 1 in the past. In Buffalo, he was a power play quarterback there before Rasmus Dahlin came around. So, probably not the most ideal situation on PP1 for them. I feel like they've tried almost every defenseman on their team this year. So we'll see if that sticks, but definitely worth watching at the very least. Like I said, Philly plays the Friday off night and then probably has the best schedule next week. So if you can fit a guy in a flyer in on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday next week, I would go for it. His shot rates are not very good, but his periffs are awesome. So even if he doesn't, if you're in a Bangers Cats or a points league with Bangers Weight, he does still have that peripheral floor. So even if he's not putting points up on the power play, I think he still has some value at the very least. How do you feel about Ristolainen here, Craig?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a situation to watch. It looks like Torts is trying to figure out who can actually quarterback that power play to some sort of a level of efficiency. He's rotated Walker, he's rotated Signham, and now Risto's getting a run there. Like you said, I think it's something to monitor. Actually, I'll give a shout out to Alan from the Taxi Squad. I think he actually called this happening in our preseason content way back in August, that Risto would get a look on PP1 in Philly.
Wow.
So good on Alan from the Taxi Squad. Because me and Jay were all in on Signham, and Signham's had a pretty solid season so far. He's just his time on the power play seems to be kind of going in and out because they can't really figure out who should be quarterbacking it. But I'm sure you would agree, and your listeners would agree, Philly's been a bit of a surprising, I don't want to call them a juggernaut, but a surprising team. They're on a really, really good run right now, getting some solid goaltending and some good consistent scoring as well. I'd love to see Tippett get some more goddamn ice time, but that's another story for another day. And then to give you an honorable mention, we don't even want to say that it's honorable, but before we jumped on tonight, I did see that Seth Jones from Chicago got put on IR, and the Blackhawks, take them for what they are, and they have been already tinkering with that power play 1 quarterback. I even saw, Zaitsev was in there in their last game, and then on their lines at practice today, that other young kid, Philip Roos, is that his last name? Roos?
Sure.
Him and Zaitsev are on the point. Philip Roos is on the point now on PP1. So if you are, in a deeper league, or you're in a league where you've seen some injuries, because we certainly have had some key defensemen hurt, it is another, it's not a very attractive thing to
it's a guy.
It's a guy that might get some power play points.
Might be playing. Yeah, might get some ice time with Bedard. So that is definitely worth noting for sure. So let's move on to shift change. So this is our add drop segment. We're going to look at some trends in terms of adding and dropping on Yahoo. So the top 5 most added skaters over the last 24 hours at 50% rostered or lower. Number 1, Anders Lee, 31% rostered. He has 13 shots in his last 3 games. So shot rates are increasing. The Islanders play tonight on a very light night. So I'm guessing that's probably why we're seeing, there's three out of the 5 top 5 added skaters are Islanders, so not a big surprise there. And he is playing with Barzal and Horvat 5v5, so pretty good situation there in Long Island. Matt Barzal has been awesome this year. And number 2, Brendan Dillon, 35% rostered. Winnipeg is playing Wednesday, Friday, so not a big surprise there. He's a Bangers Cats monster. He seems to end up on this list every single week for one reason, for whatever reason. But
gotta chase those hits, baby. Big boy
yeah,
bangers.
I guess so. Yeah, big blocker too. He's a good blocker. Kyle Palmieri, 14% rostered. He is playing on PP1. He has been all year. They pretty much had that PP1 unit cemented. It's been the same 5 guys all year, and Palmieri's been on it. I think he's pretty under rostered, this guy. Like, he has 21 points in 30 games. I mean, it not like the best production, but he's definitely a guy that probably deserves to be more than 14% rostered. I mean, I think he probably deserves to be more rostered than Anders Lee, at the very least. Although Lee does bring that the bangs a little bit more than Palmieri does. Philip Deneau, 22% rostered. He's had steady deployment with Kevin Fiala and Trevor Moore, who is just an absolute snipe show this year, leading the Kings in goals. And then number 5 is JGP, Jean Gabriel Pajot, 7% rostered. I mean, he's good for you in a Bangers Cats with face-off wins. Specifically, he's a good face-off guy, and he hits. But I mean, not the best ice time. He's a third-line center there and doesn't really get power play deployment anymore. So, any thoughts on any of these guys? Are you picking any of them up? Have you picked any of them up?
Yeah, I did roll Anders Lee last week. I did drop him, but you can't ignore any peripheral guys that are playing with Horvat, Barzal, and Brock Nelson this season, other than Pierre Engvall, because he's kind of just like a guy with legs and skates. He doesn't really do anything. As Josh knows, as a Leaf fan like myself, Pierre Engvall is just a guy. But I think I totally agree with you. Like Kyle Palmieri, steady in that top 6, steady on that power play unit, just around a 60-point pace on the season, is from that position of scarcity, that right wing position. I'm surprised it's that low. Definitely a number, I think people kind of get concerned about the Islanders and their offense, but to me, this team is not what they were the last few years. They seem to be very much more focused on offensive generation and putting the puck in the back of the net, which has led to a little bit of underperformance from Sorokin and Varlamov, but they're just not getting the same commitment to the defensive zone as they were. So I think there's definitely some validity there in both of Anders Lee and Palmieri, because if I'm a GM out there and I have some, quote unquote weak spots on my team at the wing position, you want to tap into the seasons that, especially what Barzal is doing, and Nelson's having a hell of a goal through the first 30 games too. Another underrated, player out there. If I got in on him early in a couple of leagues and just been watching it, just pile up. Brandon Dillon is a guy that we mention a lot on the Taxi Squad. Big boy, a big, beautiful banger, a triple B's. He falls right in there. He was just around 2.5 hits per game. If you're chasing categories, he's a beauty there, and he seems to always fall into some points every couple of weeks. So a definitely solid depth defenseman in a categories league. Philip Deneau, more, and that line, I think that line is missing, Victor Arvidsson. I'm curious to see when he does come back, what happens in their top 9. But Trevor Moore has been, wildly good this year in the depths of what the LA Kings were. And I know he had some moments last year, but it seems to be much more consistent this year. And, if you can tap into what he's doing, and Deneau's heated up a little bit over the last week or so as well. And as how they roll their lines, there's always going to be some ebbs and flows in their offensive production. But with PLD kind of faltering in his first full season there, the offense has got to come from somewhere. So I do understand why Dano's kind of getting picked up with heating up a little bit. And, I think Blake even mentioned more as a longer term hold. I don't know what his point pace is now, but, if you look across some of the formats that you and I are in, he's a top 100 player, some even top 80, right? And at one point he was on a 60 plus point pace. I would imagine he's still in and around there. So definitely would get in on him. I think he's dual eligible now. I think Yahoo figured that out. JGP, just a guy to me. He probably is just being added because of the opportunistic game tonight, especially if you're in a face-offs league and you're chasing that category. But yeah, like if there was one guy that I caught my eye, as you hit the nail right on the head, is that Paul Mary kind of under rostered, and just what he's been doing, right? Like a 60 point kind of quiet pace and cemented on that power play one with, Barzell finally looking like Barzell should. I think the offensive opportunity for him should continue to increase over the next couple of months.
100%. All right. Before we get to the drops, Eamon says, picked up Kachekov due to Ranta being sent down and Anderson medical issue. Thoughts? Home run. Absolute home run there, Eamon. Slam dunk.
That's probably the best 0G guy you can get out there, and he ain't available in many spots.
Absolutely.
The goaltending in Carolina hasn't been great, but they're behind, one of the best defensive structured teams in NHL. So it's Josh hit it right there. Bam. Out of the park.
Yeah. Absolute home run for sure. And he's played well lately. He's been the best of the two, I guess. Top 5 most drop skaters. Number 1, Josh Manson, 20% rostered. He's a fringe bangers guy. It's kind of a surprise that he's at the top of this list. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I know there was a storyline. Eamon actually asked a question about it in the chat, about Devon Taves kind of calling out some of his teammates after the game last night, being like, some people think that they're playing well and they're not. And that was kind of interesting. There was some speculation that he was maybe talking about Manson. He was his defense partner for a bit last night. They kind of were mixing around the defensive line. Like if you look at the last game lines on Frozen Tools, the defense pairings were all over the place. I'm not sure if that's because they were rolling 7 defensemen or not, but it's a weird one in Colorado right now. I don't know precisely who he was calling out. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how things have all of a sudden kind of got a little bit inconsistent. They haven't been getting very good goaltending. Their defense has been spotty. So I don't know. But Josh Manson, I looked at his game log and he's still doing what he does. He's still getting the hits and blocks. He's still playing a decent amount of minutes. So like, I don't really know what's going on there. But number 2, Ivan Barbashev. He's 49% rostered. Had pretty much zeros across the board last game after 4 points in 3. So I wonder if a bunch of people just went and rushed to the waiver wire because they're like, oh, Barbashev, he's scoring points, and then he didn't do anything and they dropped him again. So that does happen. Still playing with Stone and Eichel though, 5v5. So I mean, he's been getting ample opportunity, at least on 5v5 all season. Just hasn't done a ton with it. Evan Rodriguez, number 3. This is a surprising one to me. He is 48% rostered. He is actually back on the top line with Barkov and Reinhart. And I mean, yeah, it's puzzling to me. He has no points in his last 5, but his time on ice is increasing. His opportunity is better than it was. He was down on the third line for a little while, which is like there's an absolute dearth of offensive talent in the bottom 6 in Florida. So I mean, he's in a great situation. One of the best lines in the league, one of the best pairings in the league this year was Barkov and Reinhart. So anyone that's playing on their other wing should be reaping the benefits. And Rodriguez is a guy that shoots a ton. Not necessarily the most efficient shooter, but yeah, as long as he is getting that opportunity 5v5, I'm all in on Evan Rodriguez. What do you think about that? That's kind of a weird one for me.
If you listen to the squad, I'm a huge Erod believer, regardless of his inefficiency as a shooter. I thought right out the gate that this was a huge opportunity for him, especially with the the contract and the investment that Florida gave him. I figured he was going to get at least decent run in their top six. Like you said, I love guys that shoot the puck on a consistent basis, regardless of his efficiencies, and then playing with arguably one of the best centermen in the game. If you look at his past, 6 games or so, I was just looking at that as you were talking, you can see that, when he was dropped down, he wasn't being as aggressively offensive minded. His shot rate dropped, over the 3 games where his time on ice dropped below 15 minutes. And then when it went back up over the last 3 games, he's back to that, 3 shots per game or more rate, and that's what you want to see. He's also a fantasy hockey unicorn. He's try eligible, one of the few that are out
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
So in that top 6 and an opportunity to play on that top pairing with Reinhardt and Barkov, like you got to get in on that, especially with position flexibility to be had, and to have the ability to be kind of in your roster anywhere in your forward spots is beneficial on any given night. And like you said, he's kind of like that Palmieri type of guy,
Mm-hmm.
riding shotgun to those elite players, having good seasons. And like, even though he's underperformed a little bit to date, more recent, like he's still on 55 to 60 point pace. He's probably still going to score 20 to 25 goals. So it's still an above replacement forward in my mind, on an offensive team that is really underperforming right now, right? They're not getting much from Matty T. Sam Bennett hasn't really found his way yet, even like he's under rostered as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a team that eventually is going to figure it out and be similar to the team that they were last year. And Verhaeghe's been a little bit quiet compared to last year. So if Rodriguez can hold that spot, which he had earlier in the season, I think there's an opportunity for a higher ceiling here for sure. And I'd be, I'm as you are, he definitely is now, maybe not as under rostered as Palmieri, but being the third most dropped player, that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna move on to our ads and drops. So my out of the week is Tyson Forster. He's 5% rostered right now. He is averaging just under 19 minutes time on ice over the last 5 games. He is currently playing with Couturier and Konechny on line 1. He is center right wing eligible, and he's playing on PP1. He is, over the last 5 games, 124th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 86th in shots per 60, and 96th in individual scoring chances for per 60. So not bad numbers under the hood. They're not world beating, but they're pretty decent. And he has just 2 assists in those 5 games, but I'd still give him a shot as long as he has that deployment, top line, top power play, especially with the players that he's playing with. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah, I think he's already shown flashes of being, you know, a solid streaming candidate when they have an opportunistic schedule. And, Travis Konechny's having a solid bounce back season. It's good to see Couturier healthy, playing with those 2 guys, arguably their 2 best players at even strength, and then being on the top power play now, even though they're still trying to figure out who's quarterbacking that. I think you're bang on. As long as he's getting that deployment, you want to try to tap into that, especially being so under rostered and being dual eligible. You can fit him into multiple spots on your roster. And you mentioned Philly, having an opportunistic schedule coming out of the holiday break, so he's going to be up there for me as well.
All right, who you got this week? Who are you adding, Craig?
All right, Josh. Well, I took this from a different angle, not necessarily adding for next week, but kind of looking at. I love shiny new things, and I love shiny hot guy things that are doing good things. Not that
Yeah.
I'm one to advocate chasing points, because I know he's coming off a hat trick as recently as last night. That goal between the legs was disgusting. If you or the listeners haven't seen it, go check it out. But
Yeah.
my more, I don't know if it's rest of season, but I would say interim hold or add, because I think you're looking at another, situation of the Rodriguez of the world and the Palmieri of the world under rostered player, is Kirill Marchenko of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I took a similar kind of overview as you did. Over the last 5 games, he's averaging 1762 time on ice, which has led to 5 goals, 2 of which were on the power play, 2 assists for 7 points. He's currently on the right wing of line 2 with those other Russian youngsters. He's on power play 1 on the point. He has 80 shots on goal this season, so he's averaging about 2.5 shots per game. The big one for me here, though, Josh, is he's only pacing for 56 points, but he's now pacing for 34 goals. And his shot percentage is a bit unsustainable, but he had a similar shot rate last year in only 59 games, which led to 21 goals. So the shooting percentage last year versus this year is 16 percent flat last year versus 16.3 this year. It probably comes back down a little bit, but that just shows he's an efficient finisher. Comparing him to like an Evan Rodriguez, this guy can finish. And I think, I hope you would agree with me, and I think the listeners would, finding a 30 goal scorer this, 30 games into the season on the waiver wire. And I projecting him a little bit lower than that 34, 35 goal pace. It's kind of hard to come by at this point, especially with his deployment. And it looks like, since they had the coaching change, it looks like he's kind of, cemented his position on power play 1 and in the top 6, especially with the Jenner injury and the underperformance of Goudreau and Line being injured. They've got to have offense from somewhere, and that young Russian line is humming right now. So like, I want to tap into that as much as I can, especially again, position of scarcity being right wing. Not a lot of them out there from a waiver wire standpoint at this point, especially if you're a deeper league or a competitive league, but only 15% rostered. You got to go get a guy like this.
100%.
Even if you feel like you're chasing the hat trick from last night.
I see. Here's the thing. I feel like this has been coming for a while, and he's been a big apples and Genos guy. Nate's been talking about him for essentially all season, talking about his underlying numbers and how he's reached another level, and that at some point he's going to pop. So this, to me, is not chasing stats. This is like he's finally getting his due. Things are finally going in for him.
Agreed.
And while, he's not going to score a hat trick every game, but at a certain point, like last year, he was Mr. Cy Young. Like he was over 20 goals and like 4 assists or something like that. Like it was crazy numbers. And then this year he just couldn't find the back of the net at the start of the year. So I like that he has a solidified spot in the lineup. It seems like that Russian line is the only one that's sticking right now for Pascal Vincent, which, I mean, it's just been such a Yahtzee cup of lineup changes every single night, it seems like. So it's nice that there's a little bit of consistency there for Marchenko. So that's huge. So I think I wholeheartedly support that. He's definitely a guy that you should be considering holding, especially if you're struggling in the right wing position, for sure. Let's go on to my drop is Andrei Kuzmenko. He is still 66% rostered in Yahoo, which is surprising to me. He had a couple of goals a few games ago in back-to-back games, and his ice time seemed to be increasing, but it was back down to 11 minutes the other night, and then he was a healthy scratch again last night. He has just not been a factor at 5v5 due to his deployment. He's been playing down essentially on the 4th line at 5v5, but when he gets in the lineup, he's still playing on power play 1. But man, if he's not putting the puck in the net, if he's not getting on the score sheet, he's not doing anything for you, because he doesn't really shoot. As we know, not a high volume shooter. He was like Mr. Efficiency last year, but he only had around 150 shots on the season. And he does not hit, does not block, doesn't do anything for you. So I don't like that situation for Kuzmenko, and struggling to even be in the lineup at all. Pair that with the fact that Vancouver only has one game next week, like it's just, for me, it's a slam dunk drop. So yeah, for any one of you 66% of Yahoo users that still have Kuzmenko, I think you should be dropping him. Sorry Blake, bench Kuzi, drop Kuzi.
Yeah, I honestly I saw this before we jumped on, and I think I agree with you. I think it's super, for Blake and the Vancouver Canucks fans and the guys, I understand his shooting percentage last year was ridiculously unsustainable. Totally get that. And we wanted to see his shots on goal rate, increase if he wanted to actually be, a consistent 30 goal scorer. But for what, compared to what his team is doing versus his contributions, it's just, and now he's getting healthy scratched. It's not a pretty situation for him right now. And I'm not even sure, to your point, even after the bad schedule next week, how he can even like get an opportunity in that top six just based on the way the team is playing. Like the only person that he maybe can cement at this point is Niels Hoglander. Like Ilya Mikheyev is still playing particularly well with Pettersson. He looks like he fits with him from a chemistry standpoint. And it looks like the coaches like Pierre Suter in that top six, just based on his, puck retrieval skills and his ability to play off of the defensive role in the defensive end. It's not a good, no, Big Kuzi, no, we don't want this. Like, this is a guy that I wanted to believe in too, regardless of the unsustainability of his shooting percentage from last year. But I don't have him in any places. I think like maybe the only place you hold is a dynasty league. Like I think I have him in one dynasty league. Like you hold him there and hope that the investment that they gave him from a contract standpoint gives him some opportunity, either later in the season or into next year. But I think it kind of coincides with my guy, but I was kind of struggling who to put in there because I wanted to be, a risk taker and talk to you about the likes of Timo Meier and those underperforming like higher end draft pick guys. But like I have Timo Meier in many spots. If you're in a competitive league and you're trying to compete for a playoff spot, you hold him, right? You don't say bye-bye to a player of that acumen right now. And by all things measured in Timo Meier stock, it looks like he's playing with an injury from what I've read and seen from beat reporters. So hopefully that can get resolved, and then you see the likes of him coming back. But going back to Kuzmenko, it's looking bleak. It's looking bleak, Blake. Mm-hmm. It's looking bleak, Blake. So
all right, buddy. Who's your drop this week?
Yeah, so I wanted to put Timo Meier, but I didn't want your listeners to come and be like, "Oh my God, what the hell is this guy talking about? You can't drop Timo Meier." So I'm not there yet myself. I hold him in 4 of my 10 redraft and keeper leagues. So it's been a rough,
tough,
very, very sloggy, very, oh my God, why are you doing this to me, Timo? And I want Timo time. I want him to be what he should be, even in any respect. And I know the underlying numbers still look pretty positive for him, but he is not my drop. My drop right now, and although they do have the most games in hand, this is just based on solely what's been going on with him under the hood and over the last 5 games, is Vladimir Tarasenko. And let me justify this. He's 51% owned. I don't know if he's a drop, but although he's a position of scarcity in right wing, we just talked about a guy like Marchenko. I'd rather have Marchenko over Tarasenko at this point. I'd rather have Palmieri over Tarasenko at this point. I'd rather have maybe even Anders Lee, but I would say they're probably fairly comparable. But, Tarasenko only has 2 points in his last 5 games. He's averaging just around 16 and a half minutes total time on ice during that time. He's only on pace currently for 19 goals and 62 points. 62 points is nice. Okay. But the 19 goals from a guy who's supposed to be a, Josh,
30,
20,
40
20,
goals for.
yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere between 25 and 35 goals.
Yeah.
That's not what you're looking for. And I dug a little bit deeper before we came on tonight, and like his shot rates over the last 2 seasons have dropped by a full shot per game, which is quite significant for who is supposed to be a bona fide shooter in the NHL. Coming from his acumen, he hasn't had over 200 shots in 3 seasons. So that's pretty concerning for a guy who you're probably dependent on goals, right? If
Yeah.
you're holding him, uh, and he's not shooting the puck at the same rate now at this point, and that we touched on Ottawa earlier with your Chikrin point. This is a team that continues to struggle defensively, continues to kind of not be able to find their consistency offensively compared to what the expectation was. I think there's some still good things happening. There's still some opportunity there for the likes of Stützle and Giroux and their top six to bounce back. That's probably his only positive that I see, is that he is in that top six. He's on the second line with Josh Norris and Claude Giroux, if I'm not mistaken, but he's not on PowerPlay 1. He had a little bit of a sniff there earlier in the season, but he's not on PP1 now. And I just don't know if it's realistic. You want to hold him in shallower leagues for sure, but I just don't know if he's anything but a streamer right now. So is that a guy that I want to hold kind of moving forward? If I find I'm getting tight with streaming spots, probably not.
Yeah.
Because if I'm relying on him to score goals, he's not doing that. And that's the biggest red flag for me on a player like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I think you're right. You mentioned you'd prefer Marchenko, you'd prefer Palmieri. I'm definitely with you. And I think the difference between them and Tarasenko right now is power play opportunity.
Correct.
Like you mentioned. And then you said comparable to Anders Lee. Again, another guy that's got pretty good 5v5 deployment, but doesn't get the power play opportunity anymore. So I think that's actually a really good comparable, is Anders Lee. Let's go to from zero to hero. I'm going to skip all the way down to tandem trouble because I think that I want to have some conversations about a few things that are going on here. We won't do the trends this week just because just for the sake of time and because there's a little bit of overlap between that and tandem trouble. So let's start in Carolina. So Antti Ranta is on waivers. Pyotr Kochetkov is the volume starter for the time being. Their backup, his name is Yanef Peretz. He has a 916 on the season with Norfolk. He's a 23-year-old. He's the backup right now. If there's a back-to-back, you may see him get some minutes here. So worth discussing, but I think we kind of already mentioned Pyotr Kochetkov. He's an absolute, like, if he's still on your waiver wire, he's probably not, but he's an absolute home run to have in your lineup right now. Martin Jones, who is 39% rostered, has played well for the Leafs so far. He has a 949 save percentage in 3 starts. Actually, 3 starts, and he came in relief of Joseph Woll when he got hurt in that game against Ottawa and played actually quite well. Ilya Samsonov has really struggled. He's looked really awful. It's just not there's something going on there with Sammy. Jones has had back-to-back starts. It could be his net right now. I don't know if you saw any of the Rangers game last night. They lost 5-2. But I didn't feel like Martin Jones
wasn't the problem.
I didn't think he was a problem. There was only one goal, which happened to be the winning goal, that I thought he probably should have stopped. That was that Braden Schneider. Braden Schneider just like blew by everybody.
Totally
just
agree.
like turned the jets on and blew by everyone on the ice. And I was like, oh, he's just going to get a clear path to the net, and then slid it 5-hole. It wasn't a great goal, but everything else was just 3 of the Rangers goals were like off multiple bodies and into the net off of the Leafs own defenseman where like no one knew where the puck was. So how do you blame Martin Jones on any of those if no one else on the ice is even tracking the puck? So honestly, like I wouldn't be surprised to see him get another start and maybe even both for the rest of the week. So if Martin Jones is out there, I mean, what have you thought of Jones so far?
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. I think he's probably going to get the bulk of the starts until Wall comes back. Sammy has just been Swiss cheese, and and the team looks different when he's in net. So like they appeared to have found a solution in Wall, and then Wall got hurt. So hopefully Jones can kind of run with it, and I suppose you hang on to Samsonov and maybe hope he runs into a couple of wins here or there. But if you have any peripheral stats from a goaltending standpoint, don't expect them to look good after a Samsonov start. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it could be a sneaky grab for the next month and a bit, keeping Martin Jones in your lineups.
Karl Vejmelka had a shutout. He showed signs of life the last little bit. He had a shutout against the Sabres and then stopped 16 of 16 against Ottawa in relief of Connor Ingram, who struggled to start the game, and backstopped Arizona to that 4-3 comeback win that we referenced before. So potentially Vejmelka could be getting back in that net here. I don't know if I'd say that he is the 1A again, but I think you could see more of a share of the net there. So he's very, very available just because of how much he's struggled to start the year. But it seems like he's kind of finding his mojo. So definitely keep an eye on Karl Vejmelka. Sam Ersson from the Flyers seems to be getting a run right now. And he is the Flyers are red hot. And so is he. He has a .930 save percentage quietly since November 10th. I honestly wasn't really paying attention and shame on me. So I don't know, man. Have you picked up Ersson in any places?
I have him in the Taxi Squad Listener League. I just picked him up now because I have Hart. I just was picking up the handcuff, and it's been nice. It's been real nice because Hart's illness seems to be kind of lingering, and I actually saw something on Twitter earlier today that it's essentially fatigue and dehydration that's keeping him out of the lineup right now.
Right.
And he's lost like somewhere in the vicinity of like 25 or 30 pounds from this illness. Wow. So Erson's probably going to get another week of the bulk of the starts, unless the brain trust in Philly is just going to pump Hart full of calories and electrolytes over the holiday break and try to get him back for next week. But yeah, I don't watch a lot of Philly hockey, but it's been interesting to see the Torts serum it hasn't run dry yet, and the team's actually playing steady, consistent hockey, right?
They're kind of making me want to watch them, to be honest, just because of what they're doing, because of the wins they're putting on the board, because of what they're doing under the hood. Because honestly, as a team, they've looked very good in a lot of statistical categories outside of their power play. But I mean, I talk all the time about how any team that doesn't load up their power play with their top talent and just play them on power play one is making a huge mistake. And Torts is notorious for just like throwing whoever out there. I mean, we talked about it before. They've used like 4 different defensemen on PP1 this year. So, and then Jake Ottinger is out week to week with a lower body injury. So Scott Wedgwood is going to get a run for the time being. That is a really good situation. So I would be picking up Scott Wedgwood if he's available. And then Billy Husso and Alex Lyon are both hurt. So James Reimer is taking the net in Detroit. He is playing tonight. I haven't seen how the game is going.
It's not good. So it's not good, Josh. It's not good.
No, that's not good.
It's not good.
That's not good. I picked him up 5-2 Winnipeg in the third. That's not,
and they can't even pull him because there's nobody healthy.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing, right? And I mean, the Jets have been great, and Detroit has not been great. It's not looking good there. Larkin's back, but they have really struggled in the Patrick Kane era. Let's go to our 0 to hero picks, or Hutch versus, as I like to call it now that Binksy's not here anymore. Last week's verdict. Let's talk about that for a second. Josh got the win against TJ. TJ picked Antiranta, and even while he was picking, was like, this is the wrong pick. But he went with it anyways. And he was right that it was the wrong pick. I picked Joey Decord. He had 16.8 Cacupful points. Antiranta had negative 1.8 and got put on waivers. So it was a pretty definitive win. So I now have a 5-2 lead on my opponents this year. Craig, who were you taking this week?
I think I might immediately regret this decision, but I wrote it down. So
you know what? Tonight doesn't count. It's okay. Tonight doesn't count.
So tonight doesn't count, which is good. But I'm going to give him a little bit of kudos, considering what's been happening in Detroit. 5 goals on 37 shots
it's not that bad.
Terrible. It's not great. It's not good, but it's not terrible. So worth
noting, Reimer has historically played very well for teams that are terrible defensively. When he gets like 40 plus shots, when he has to make 40 plus saves a game, I mean, he dragged a terrible Toronto Maple Leafs team into the playoffs in 2013. He was very good in San Jose for the last few years, where they were god awful. So, I mean, I don't know. Might not be the worst pick in the world.
And I'm not gonna take the coward's way out and take one of my honorable mentions. So I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna take a James Optimus Reimer in the Hutch versus Craig 0G goalie battle here. And I still think he's a viable ad for those that need help in net. Like Josh said, he's been a goalie that's played well on bad teams when given an opportunity to play. There is a realm of possibilities where he gets I think I noted it here. He could get 5 starts over the next week and a half because they brought Michael Hutchinson in on a PTO, and I'm pretty sure that guy's like 47. So I don't know if he's going to get more than 1 or 2 starts. And I know they have a back-to-back Friday, Saturday, so he probably gets one of those games. Maybe they give Reimer the front half and not New Jersey on Saturdays, just so Reimer can build some confidence, get rolling. But I'm taking Optimus Reimer in our Josh versus Craig battle here.
If by 47 you mean a 47 overall in NHL 24, then you're probably right. It's pretty close to that. My pick is going to be Scott Wedgwood, 33% rostered. Like I mentioned, he's getting a run with Ottinger hurt. They're playing Vancouver and Nashville to finish out the week. So Vancouver, I don't really love that matchup because they've just been banging on all cylinders offensively. But nonetheless, I'm going to stick with it. I think that's the best team situation. It's better than Elvis Merzlikin's team situation. I think Columbus is so hot and cold. Elvis has been pretty good this year. Actually been quite good this year. But now they're all of a sudden turning into this team with a 3 goaltending carousel. They've got Tarasov playing. They've got who's the other guy? Spencer Martin. Yeah. I couldn't even remember who it was. Spencer Martin playing. So I don't know, man. These I mean, TJ and I were ranting about it last week about these 3 goaltender carousels. It's so bad for fantasy.
It's terrible.
But, you know, it is what it is. Like, it seems to be the way things are trending, which is unfortunate. But Scott Wedgwood, the Dallas Stars do not employ this 3 goaltending carousel system. Scott Wedgwood's going to get a run here, so I'm going to roll with Wedgwood this week. So you have James Reimer, I have Scott Wedgwood. We will see how things go next week. Let's get to the hockey hotline. That is our mailbag segment. We fielded some questions from the Discord. And actually, before we get to the Discord questions, Tyler Wilson has a question here. He says, so you guys wouldn't, he's in reference to, we had a conversation about Timo Meier earlier. He says, you guys wouldn't package Meier with Reinhardt to get Keller and Kempe in a Bangers Cats. It's getting so hard to hang on to Meier at this point. I would not. I think you'd be selling low on Meyer, and that's not a situation that I want to be in. Um, I I think at a certain point he's gonna pop. It is unfortunate that he's not hitting because he used to be a bangers cats monster, like one of the best bangers cats players out there. You talk about him, you talk about Evander Kane, you talk about Brady Kachuk. Like those are the guys that you used to want to target early.
What
That
scares
pretty
me
much,
for him is his shot rates are down too.
yeah, man.
It's not good.
It's
It's not
sketchy. It's
good.
sketchy. But that being said, do you want to sell high on Sam Reinhart? I
No.
think that probably isn't. I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing to do, but at the same time, I mean, he's playing with Barkov. That's one of the best. Their on ice numbers are right near the top of the league, and anyone that plays with those two is their on ice numbers shoot way up. So it's I'm struggling to. I have Sam Reinhart in the couple, and I've been really,
Just enjoy
really
that. Just enjoy that.
yeah, exactly. I'm trying to stop myself from selling high because I just feel like it's semi-sustainable. Not obviously his shooting percentage is a bit high, but I still feel like he's in a good enough situation that just enjoy the value of that
And
pick. You probably got him in the 5th or 6th round.
you gotta love a high end player like that on a contract year, and he's playing out of his
Mhm.
mind to get that money. And hey, I see Tyler's comment in the chat there. Like, I feel your moment of weakness, but and I love all four of those players in that deal. And I do see Meyer and Kempe sort of interchangeable in some respects, but you're not getting enough value for what Reinhardt's doing right now
Yeah.
in Keller. Even though I love Keller in terms of what he does from an Arizona standpoint, and he's dual eligible in fantasy hockey, but it's just not enough value for what Reinhardt's doing right now. In most scoring categories, he's a top 15, top 10 player right now. You can't undersell him at
Yeah.
this moment. If you could,
That's
Josh, maybe I'm crazy, but if you could do Myers straight up for Kempe,
oh yeah,
I would pull
I
the
think
trigger on that in
at this point at this point,
immediately.
I probably would do that. And yeah, but I 100% agree. I meant to say that before. I don't think that's enough return for those two.
Yeah,
So especially Keller. Keller's not really a great bangers cats player.
no,
Not really a high volume shooter. So you're getting points, but outside of that, he doesn't return a ton of value across the board. So
agreed.
yeah, I think Kempe. Yeah, if you could swing Meyer for Kempe straight up,
You
I
let me know if
don't
that
think that
works,
you're gonna.
Tyler, because I'm gonna do it if that works in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, give it a go. Give it a go, Craig. All right. So our first question, I guess it's not, I mean, it's sort of a question. Bravest Face 666 says William Nylander value. Now we weren't really sure what he meant by that, but if you're asking that you should if whether or not you should sell high on William Nylander, I'm gonna say no. I think that he is playing like a early second round fantasy asset right now, and I think that it's completely sustainable. He is absolutely popping. There's nothing under the hood that seems like it's going to stop at any point. Now he's playing with Austin Matthews on the top line. They've looked fantastic together, and Matthews is absolutely, I mean, he's back. He's on a 67 goal pace this year. So that's looking pretty nice. And then obviously the Leafs power play, not as strong as it's been in terms of conversion over the last few years, not getting a ton of opportunities either. They actually had 0 power play opportunities against the Rangers last night. But I mean, I could talk about my complaints about potential bias towards the Leafs, but I'd be preaching to the choir in terms of with Craig, but and everyone else would just roll their eyes at me. But anyways, yeah, I think I'm sticking with William Nylander. What about you, buddy? I think I probably know your answer.
Yeah, I think it's depending on what you're considering, what value is. You're not trading him. Like just looking in Cupful, he's the 8th ranked scoring player overall. Like if you really want to take a shot and you want to try to get McDavid, who's the 15th ranked overall scorer, okay, but
yeah,
you got
that's what
for
we're talking about at this point, though. Like, I'm probably not even selling high to try and get a guy like Kachuk, because I feel like,
no.
uh, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like William Nylander is that type of player, so I'm not taking the risk to get like a buy low player like that, or Jason Robertson, or guys like that went in the first round that are maybe disappointing people. No, William Nylander, I think I'm sticking with him unless you can get one of those like top 5 guys or whatever, which is unlikely.
I'm locking the Van Cap doors if people are trying to get rid of people like William Nylander off their fantasy team.
You're not welcome. Glitch in the Matrix asks, what are your guys' expectations for Patches? Should I pump the brakes thinking he could possibly be point per game if he's healthy? I just added him for free off waivers. So in terms of point per game, I don't think I don't think that expectation is realistic. He's been out for a long time. However, he does return ridiculous value. Even in the 5 games that he played with Carolina, he had unbelievable stats under the hood. This guy is a shot machine. He just like creates. And even like in Vegas, in Carolina, even though obviously limited time, I looked at his last year in Vegas, and all of his individual rate stats that we use, shots per 60, individual Corsi 4 per 60, individual scoring chances 4 per 60. If you put those, if you compared those to the rest of the league this year, he would be in the top 10 in all 3 categories. So this is a guy that can return you a ton of value. He does hit a bit. I'm not sure if that's something that he is going to continue to do at this age, or because of his injury history, maybe he shies away from the physical play. But there is some serious peripheral floor with Pacioretty. But in terms of point per game, I don't think he could get quite there. Especially, I imagine the on ice numbers are probably going to be worse than what he's had in a long time, just because Washington is not great. But there is a follow-up question from somebody else on this. Professional Slacker says, to add on to the question, what effects do you think Patches coming back in the lineup will have on Ovi, Carlson, and Wilson, good or bad? I think it can only be good. There's such a dearth of offensive talent on this team. Ovechkin just isn't going, and I think adding another weapon on the power play is interesting. Having a shot on both flanks, so having someone to kind of another option there, because right now the power play, and it has been for a long time, is pass the puck to Ovechkin for one-timers. And right now it's just not working. Like, he's not putting the puck in the net. And you wonder if penalty kills are just standing in front of Ovechkin, like not giving him any space. And I think that is certainly a factor. So having another weapon on the other side could create space for Ovechkin. And then that returns value for John Carlson too, because he's at the top feeding those 2 guys. So I think it can only be good for the guys that you mentioned. And then Tom Wilson, I mean, Tom Wilson's doing things himself regardless. And has a really nice peripheral floor, and it's just playing really well. So I mean, I don't think it would have negative effects at the very least. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Craig? Sorry, I kind of was rambling on about that for a bit, but any thoughts on that?
I think Glitch in the Matrix, like if you got him for free, which most people did, and held him in the IR plus, I think it's a high upside, arguably elite player when he was in the league and was healthy, and he slots directly into that top 6 and right onto that power play 1 in Washington when he does return. But I think you have to temper your expectations because he's coming off 2 Achilles. And like you said, does that impact his ability to skate? Does it impact his ability to shoot, to hit? I think you take the free money and you run with it if he is the Patches of old.
Yeah.
But you have to have tempered expectations here. And determine where you're at when he does eventually return, which I was just looking as you were talking there, it could be sometime in January. So yes, he's
Yeah.
skating, but he's not necessarily ready for game action yet. So take the free ad, see what happens from a deployment standpoint, see if he gets right back into the mix in terms of offensive productions and shots on goal rate. Ride that if it is the patches of old, but you also have to determine if he fits into your roster at that point as well from a positive standpoint and who you would be dropping to activate him. So just a couple of things to think about. Other than that, I agree with what you said for sure. I think it's a positive for the Washington Capitals offensively for sure, especially. And I was actually listening to something yesterday on the Capitals struggles and OV's struggles, and that's exactly what's happening on their power play. Is they are literally defensively, teams are just locking down Ovi because there's nobody, like there's no other play design on their power play other than feeding him. And they even tried to move him to the slot to try to give teams a different look, but they just shifted the coverage. So it was the same struggles. So I think this does, if patches can be even 75% patches and becomes a power play specialist, it opens up the power play significantly for Ovechkin and Carlson. And I suppose Wilson as well. But like you said, Wilson is doing Wilson things regardless. So
100%, man. We'll go through a few of these quickly. So just because we're running a little bit long, Dave H asks, is Huberdeau a drop in all formats? Yes. Do you think yes?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Face off Ninja. You can go back. Nate and Blake talked about Jonathan Huberdeau, or actually, I think it was Blake and Jason Chen on Cream of the Crop this week. Talked a little bit about Huberdeau and some of the things under the hood. So I don't want to drag too long on Huberdeau because
except for Mackenzie Weegar and Elias Lindholm and Nazem Kadri has been okay. The Calgary Flames are a nightmare. Blake Coleman. Blake Coleman's actually been.
Blake Coleman's been pretty good. The
Coleman
Kadri Zari line has actually been pretty good. But outside of that, it's not great. It's not great at all.
And I think Huberdeau is now under, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to look up it quickly, but I'm pretty sure he's under like a 40-point pace.
Oh yeah, it's bad. It's near 40-point pace. Yeah,
and over the last 2 games, he's been under 15 minutes time on ice. Like that's gross.
It's somehow considerably worse than last year, like a year where we thought it couldn't get any worse. It's gotten worse. So they got to do something about that guy. He needs to I don't know, needs to get some therapy or something. It's really unfortunate, like because it's clearly
it's got to be between the ears at this point. Like
you don't just forget how to be a player like that who was like a point per game plus player for numerous years and then all of a sudden just be dog shit, basically. Like it's clearly a mental thing at this point. Face Off Ninja asks, it's been 1 game with Svetch, but do you think he can pace for 75-80 points rest of season? For a possible trade, would you think he could outpace Marchand the rest of the way? I think he could. I think, again, another guy with a better peripheral floor than Marchand. He shoots more, he hits. So if that's a factor in your league, absolutely. 75-80 points, that's something Svetch has done in the past. So as long as his injury is not a lingering thing, which it's, I mean, we don't really know at this point because he's kind of been in and out of the lineup. We thought he was good at the start of the year and he wasn't. And then he came back and still had to take some time off again. So we'll see what happens there. He has been fairly productive, not in terms of goals, but in terms of points and periffs. So I think I probably wouldn't be dealing him for Marchand. And I think 75-80 points is within the realm of possibility. But the jury's still out on whether or not that injury is going to affect him in that way. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think my only concern is if you were going to do that deal is you have the Brindamore blender in Carolina, and is Svetch going to get the same time on ice and overall deployment as Marchand? Probably not. So that's the only limitation in terms of his upper ceiling compared to Marchand's ceiling. Even though Marchand is kind of on the back end of his career, he's still doing Marchand things this year alongside Pasta, who's been unbelievable. But if you're looking at an uptake in shots on goal and hits, it's Fetch for me for sure.
Jurnat says, streamed Levi and he was playing like a hold. Would I regret dropping him after one bad game? I think you could probably drop Levi. I think Buffalo is an absolute disaster right now. I think Levi was a guy that I thought would be a hold this year, but has been pretty easily found on the waiver wire, I guess. But Blake says you guys should do a high five. Craig right hand, Josh left hand. All right, you ready, Craig? Oh, boom! There we go. All right, love it, Blake. All right. Do you agree with that, man?
Yeah, look, I was a big believer like you were in Levi at the beginning of the season, but Buffalo has been a disaster. They look worse defensively than they did last year, which I don't even know how that's possible. and their offensive acumen has not been great either. So I honestly, if I'm a GM out there, I'm maybe trying to get off as many Buffalo shares as possible, other than maybe Darlene. And I know Cousins has been showing some sign of life, and Tuck has been okay, but they're just not. They're not good right now. It's not good.
They're kind of in a blender too, like Columbus a lot of the time, but that's more because they just keep getting hurt. So that's an unfortunate situation too. Is that like Thompson, Skinner, Tuck, they've all been hurt at different times this year. Skinner's not in the lineup right now.
The only thing I'll say about them is their top line was getting like 20, 21 minutes time on ice last year, and now they're getting like 16.
Yeah, they're getting they're rolling the lines again. I think Don Granato, I said it on Twitter last night. I think you saw this, but I'm like, when they were down 7-1 in the second period, I was like, they either have Columbus right where they want them, or Don Granato needs to be fired after this game. Like this is not good. Columbus famously blowing a 5-0 lead to the Leafs in the third period last week. That was crazy. Still winning the game, but that was a wild third period. All right, let's do one more. So I'm going to go with Josiah. He asked, what happened to the Rupe Hints of last season's playoffs? I know J-Rob's struggling, but I always considered Hints to be enough of a play driver to not be completely tied to J-Rob's production. What do you think, man? Any opinions on Rupe Hints here?
I don't think he's been particularly bad. Like, I don't know what the expectation was. Like, I know he was ridiculous in the playoffs last year, but he hasn't been awful. What does he have? 26 points in 31 games. Like, he's still pacing for around 75 points. And like this, I was having a conversation with one of our listeners about J-Rob, kind of coinciding with this. Like, J-Rob is still pacing at over a point per game, even though he's at a slow start. And I understand that's not what he did last year, but everybody needs to, like, you got to temper your expectations sometimes when a guy blows up. It may not be exactly reality when it comes down to that player. Do you want more from J-Rob? Do you want more from Hintz? Potentially. But I don't think Hintz has been overly that bad. Like, he's not shooting as much as I would like to see, but I don't think it's like panic and sell low or move him at this point.
Part of that is time on ice too. Like, his time on ice has decreased. They've kind of been rolling their lines a little bit more this year. But yeah, his shot rates are down slightly, not a crazy amount. Still shooting a bit, having more shots blocked than last year. The big thing here is the shooting percentage is 15.38, which is pretty high. Like, that's above average in the league. But for him, like, he's baby dry. He's Mr. Efficiency. The last few years, last year he had a 20% shooting percentage, which I think we all thought would regress, but the previous 2 years he had 17 and then 16. So 15 is a bit of a drop. In the playoffs last year, He was getting more time on ice. His shot rates were a little bit higher, but yeah, like you said, his point pace is like he's still high 70s, and
I
his
just
point
checked
pace
it.
last
I
year.
just checked it now. He's pacing for 76 points and 30
Yeah,
goals.
and
But
last year he
that's pretty good.
and last year he paced for 84 points, so
Yeah.
it's really not that much of a drop off. So I don't think that it. I don't think Rupe Hintz is a big concern. I wonder if maybe people were expecting him to pop even more just because he's a young player. Robertson, I think, is more of a concern just because he was playing like a first round fantasy player last year and was drafted accordingly. So that hurts a whole lot more than I think Rupe Hintz does. Hintz is still doing Hintz things, and Robertson, unfortunately, under the hood, there's been quite a significant drop off. So that's
Well,
where
let's
it's
tell
concerning.
Josiah and the listeners out there, there's still 62 games left. Like there's things that could happen
It's true.
that, Rupe could get to the 84 point pace again, and J Rob could get to a 95 point pace, and J Rob was off to a slow start last year anyways. And look what he did in the second half, right?
Yeah. Blake says, just to close this out, not sure if you talked about it, but how about these Jets? Ehlers and Velarde party. Ehlers, Velarde, Scheifele, all with goals tonight. I want to look at their time on ice. Let's see what they did. Ehlers had 16-13, so pretty good for him.
For
But
him, yeah.
yeah, for Ehlers, that's nice. But yeah, the Jets are banging on all cylinders, even without Kyle Connor. So
what is that? 13 shots on goal between the three of them,
yep.
and 6 points tonight. That's
Yep.
That's a nice sandwich on that top line. I'll take that
yeah,
sandwich.
that line's been very sick. Well, that's all we got for tonight. Craig, do you want to plug anything before we shut things down here?
Yeah, other than continue the support out there for the listeners, for the Apples and Geno's boys, Josh and Blake and Nate, on all of their content. Keep that going. Join their Discord. But please follow along our journey. The Taxi Squad, the 5-hole Taxi Squad, the 5-hole fantasy hockey presentation. We're in the driver's seats of the van cab for the interim of this year. Well, TJ, Zach, and Raj take a year off. We welcome you to listen along wherever you get your podcasts there for even more fantasy hockey content. You see my Twitter/X handle in my display there at Krager's Life. Follow the rest of the Taxi Squad boys at Taxi Squad Allen and at Taxi Squad J. And I always forget Matty K's handle, but I will make sure I say it. And as we all are one big community, feel free to join our Discord as well. Very much just as lively and exciting for the listeners as the Apples and Genos. And keep doing what you guys are doing. It was a pleasure being on with you, Josh. And just before he gets up my ass, also our final taxi car or squad driver, please follow him along. Some great stuff there. He is our numbers and deeper diver into the under the hood stats stuff at Matt Callaghan, so KALAGIAN. So those are the Taxi Squad boys that I encourage you to follow on Twitter /X and get into our content. I'm posting as much as I can on Twitter /X in terms of our observations in the fantasy scope. But yeah, I think those are good one too for those that are new to fantasy hockey or new to running a league is check out Mike Rogerson's Rog's 5-hole fantasy hockey guide, the sister channel to 5-hole fantasy hockey. He's been releasing a limited series for new GMs and new commissioners. So it's great content to check out as well. And there's a lot of good resources at the 5-hole fantasy hockey website as well, just like similar to what Nate puts out that TJ finally fixed. So it is all working. So so definitely check that out as well.
All right. Blake says, get in the taxi and get to biz. And I support that. You guys are doing great work over there. Craig, thank you for joining me tonight. You are, right up there competing for one of the deepest and most gravelly voices in the whole fantasy hockey podcast space. So you might have taken, like, I think TJ was number one back before this year, but I think you might be edging him out here.
This is my real voice too. This is not a
you're not putting it on.
No, this is my real voice, and trust me, Alan, our other Texas squad driver who does all our editing, it's been a journey for him to try to figure out how to get the pitch in my voice tolerable for our listeners. So,
hey man, Alan, I will say before I do the final housekeeping, I know I keep saying we're done, but Alan, I just figured out he's the pork man in the Discord. He was asking questions in our mailbags 2 years ago when Binksy and I first started the midweek podcast. So shout out Alan. Love you, buddy. I sent you a DM in the Discord, but I know it's kind of weird when you're not friends on Discord. Sometimes you don't see them. It doesn't give you a notification. So yeah, shout out Alan, the pork man. Please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you to those who already have. It's helped us a lot with our audience growth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I mentioned off the top, we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season. So help us out with that. Again, even if you're an audio listener, I know you all have YouTube accounts. Just hop on your YouTube, hit subscribe, walk away. You don't even have to watch. But it would be really nice to get our subscriber count up. Tell all your friends as well.
Get into it, listeners. Get into it, listeners.
Get into it, motherfuckers. Let's go. Also, if you like our content, check out the Apples and Genos Patreon to support us on a monthly basis. Hop into the Apples and Genos Discord server. We're having lots of discussions about fantasy hockey in there, as Craig mentioned. Shout outs to the band. They're there for providing our music. Their Spotify link is in the episode description. Follow us on X or Twitter or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Nate is at Apples Genos. Blake's at Blake Creamer AG. I'm at Just Josh and 401. Please practice safe stats. Happy holidays. Have a good one, folks.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Good night, everybody. It's all love.